In part 1 we saw how 16-year-old Henryk Mania was arrested in the second week of World War II by a German patrol who accused him of trying to poison them through coffee that they had demanded he give them. He was taken to what was called Posen Concentration Camp at Fort VII in Poznań. There he was deployed to the Sonderkommando, digging graves and burying the victims of Nazi mass murder. He continued to do this as part of Sonderkommando Lange, which murdered the mentally and physically challenged in hospitals and care homes throughout the occupied part of Poland the Nazis renamed Reichsgau Wartheland. When the Sonderkommando Lange started to murder Jews by mobile gas vans, he continued to dig the graves. He was deployed to the first Nazi death camp at Chełmno nad Nerem, named Kulmhof in German. Here his role was not just digging graves of the murdered, but he also became part of the murder machinery. He was present when the Jewish victims were brought to Chełmno, and he was among those that took the victims to the gas vans. He was accused of using a whip to force people into the vans, and one witness described how he took part in the sexual abuse of the female victims before they were murdered. He was by now free to come and go as he pleased, and sometimes was even taken out to meals in restaurants by the German and Austrian personnel. He was injured in a shooting incident when a drunken SS man discharged his weapon and was taken to a hospital in Koło. Later he was involved in the location of the graves of the murdered in order to destroy their bodies as part of the Sonderkommando 1005 operation to destroy the evidence of Nazi crimes. From there he was briefly in Auschwitz and Mauthausen. The end of World War II found him in Austria in a subcamp of Mauthausen, Linz III. He was one of only 4 Polish prisoners from the Chełmno death camp who managed to survive the war. Shortly after liberation there was an investigation into what happened at Chełmno nad Nerem by Andrzej Bednarz, an investigating judge. This investigation led to charges against 3 members of the German staff. On the 29th of March 1947 this investigation was suspended, although the documentation collected was to be used in the future, both in Poland and in Germany. After liberation, Mania returned to his home village and went to live in the nearby town in Wolsztyn. However, there were also former prisoners of Fort VII who began to gossip about him and insinuated that Mania had survived imprisonment thanks to his collaboration with the Germans. In this situation, he chose to get lost in a big city. He moved to Poznań. Whilst he was in Poznań, he met someone from Kalisz who had worked as a driver in Koło during the war. When questioned, Mania denied that he'd been in Koło during the war. However, the former became suspicious and reported him to the police. The investigation established that there was a curious similarity of names. In 1953, an investigation into his war activities was started, but after 3 years the investigators concluded that there was insufficient evidence of his collaboration with the Germans. In 1957 it was found that he was a member of the Chełmno camp crew, and several witnesses also testified against him. Meanwhile, Mania moved to Szczecin. He got married there, he had a son and a daughter. He was employed at the municipal and then district waterworks and sewage company. He was a valued and an award-winning employee. On the 22nd of July 1959 he was awarded the Bronze Cross of Merit. He retired on the 1st of January 1982. Following the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich in 1942, a wave of repression was carried out throughout Bohemia and Moravia. 2 villages, Leżaki and Lidice, were destroyed and their inhabitants murdered. The children from Lidice were deported. 2 deemed suitable for Germanization were taken, but the rest were murdered at the death camp at Chełmno nad Nerem. In 1962, a correspondent of the Czechoslovak daily, Ruda Prawo, asked the Polish militia for permission to interview Henryk Mania and Henryk Malichak. The interviews concerning the murder of children from Lidice were conducted in August 1962 in the presence of a police officer. Unfortunately, these texts have not survived. This case reignited the interest of law enforcement agencies. On the 14th of November 1963, an investigation was launched by the Poznań unit of the Polish Security Service, the SB, Służba Bezpieczeństwa, the Polish equivalent of the KGB. It concerned the activities of Polish workers at the death camp at Chełmno nad Nerem. On the 14th of April 1964, the SB investigating officer made a decision to discontinue the investigation. Although the investigation appears to have been done in a could-not-care-less manner, it would appear now that there was sufficient evidence to proceed against Henryk Mania for his role in assisting the crime of genocide. However, the provincial prosecutor in Poznań called off the investigation on the 30th of April 1964. The justification for such a decision was the passage of time, as well as the deaths of many witnesses or the inability to interview them because they'd gone to Israel. This included Mordechai Żurawski, Mordechai Podlebnik and Szymon Srebnik, who were interviewed for Claude Lanzmann's film Shoah. There was also a lack of evidence for crime having been committed in the opinion of the prosecutor. In 1967, Mania was interrogated again, this time in connection with an investigation into the extermination of the mentally ill in the Warthegau. He was interrogated again in February 1977. This time the investigators were interested in his arrest and imprisonment in Wolsztyn at the very beginning of the occupation. What was very unusual about Mania was that he never applied for compensation nor the status of war victim, which had a number of advantages, including financial advantages. Whereas on the whole, German authorities had taken very little effort to seek out major Nazi criminals in the 1950s and 60s, after unification they started to make a major effort to track down some others. It is as though a new generation of prosecutors wanted to atone for the sins of those that had gone before them. This in turn seems to have rubbed off on some of their counterparts in Poland. An investigation dropped on the 30th of April 1964 was resumed on the 28th of August 1991 against a number of people who assisted the genocide that had occurred in Poland during the Second World War. As part of this investigation, Henryk Mania was interrogated as a suspect. He gave a detailed explanation of his stay in German captivity, consistent with previous testimony and the circumstances of the operation of the camp at Chełmno nad Nerem. However, he denied responsibility in the scope of mass murders. He confirmed what was being done to the victims brought to Chełmno to be killed, but he denied using physical violence against any of the prisoners. He pointed out that the only activities that were assigned to him by the Germans were carrying wood to burn corpses and searching the bodies of gassed victims before they were buried. He admitted that together with other non-Jewish Sonderkommando members, he had freedom to move around the camp and leave it. When asked why he did not take multiple chances to escape, he replied that the penalty for this was the murder of the fugitive's family. However, another Sonderkommando said that the Polish Sonderkommando were not threatened. The investigators had a lot of scope and funding to seek out other witnesses. They did an inspection of the area where the former extermination camp was located, and archaeological research carried out there led to the discovery of human remains. Further proceedings were initiated and the evidence was collected, not only from Poland but also from the chief German institution for investigating National Socialist crimes in Ludwigsburg. It was now considered to be highly suspect that Mania had not applied for compensation from the Polish-German Reconciliation Foundation, which was almost unprecedented amongst survivors of German camps in Poland. The investigation was suspended once more on the 26th of January 1999 for procedural reasons. However, once more it was reopened on the 1st of September 2000. On the 2nd of November 2000, Henryk Mania was visiting a cemetery in Szczecin. Here he was arrested. On the 3rd of November 2000, a district court in Poznań had him put in pre-trial detention, which was extended several times. On the 16th of March 2001, the investigation was closed and an indictment was submitted to the court accusing him of, in the period from the 8th of December 1941 to the 7th of April 1943, at Chełmno nad Nerem, acting jointly and in concert with others, he took part in the crimes of genocide in support of the Nazi occupiers carried out in the local extermination camp on the Jewish population and other nationalities by beating prisoners and taking their valuables, clothing and personal items, and he led those who were to die to the gas wagons. The accusation was based on the testimony of over 50 witnesses, site inspection reports and human remains discovered there, photographs as well as archival documentation and trial records from Poland and Germany. During the trial, Henryk Mania's defense lawyer strongly emphasized his innocence. He recalled the fact that the accused became a prisoner of the occupier at the age of 16 on false charges, and the influence of the horrors he then saw must have had on the young man's psyche. At the end of the war, he was in Austria. He could have stayed there, but he voluntarily chose to return to Poland. After the war, he'd been an exemplary citizen. The defense attorney claimed that the prosecutor omitted or downplayed circumstances in favor of the accused, and where there was doubt, this was always resolved to his detriment. Media coverage, he said, was used as a mechanism intended to influence the defendant's family and friends, and thus further on his psyche in order to weaken his will to defend himself. During the proceedings, Henryk Mania only admitted to taking valuables from victims, including through body searches and providing occasional supervision of Jews on their way back to the kitchen, but not participating in activities that constituted a direct element in the machinery of death. On the 6th of July 2001, the district court in Poznań issued a judgment in which Henryk Mania was found guilty of the offence he was accused of and sentenced to 8 years imprisonment, to be reduced by his previous stay in custody. In its justification for the conviction, the court noted that, although initially the accused was actually a prisoner of the Nazi occupiers, but as time passed his situation changed. As a member of the Sonderkommando Kulmhof, he had adequate living conditions, as had German members of the camp crew. He also received better food, medical care and freedom of movement. The completely different treatment of Jewish prisoners was emphasized. These people had to do back-breaking work in chains, and when they became physically weak, they were killed and they were replaced with people from the newly arrived transports. He appealed against the ruling, but the Court of Appeals in Poznań upheld the contested judgment. An appeal was then sent to the Supreme Court. The court did not accept the argument about the marginal importance of his work at the facility. It was considered impossible that as the youngest member of the crew that he would be able to survive a year and a half in a death camp without taking action going beyond non-invasive personal searches, and at the same time being treated on an equal footing with Poles and Germans playing significant roles in the extermination process. He took part as an accomplice in actions that contribute to the deaths of tens of thousands of victims, while being conscious of the nature of these actions and accepting their consequences. However, when passing judgment, the court also took into account the reasons for leniency. It noted that Henryk Mania was only 16 when taken to Fort VII, and at that age he had witnessed terrible crimes committed there. The murders carried out against the sick and disabled must certainly have influenced the development of a young person's psyche and the decisions made by him in later life. When imposing the sentence, the court also took into account the long-term exemplary character of the accused at the end of the war and the leniency of the punishments meted out to the German National Socialist criminals by German courts. By this time, the health of Henryk Mania, now almost 80, was deteriorating. The court chose to defer imprisonment until his health improved. His family applied to the President of Poland, Alexander Kwaśniewski, for a pardon, but he refused. On the 1st of December 2005, now aged 82, Henryk Mania was arrested and placed in custody in Szczecin. However, he got iller, and on the 13th of January 2006, after only a month and a half of his stay in prison, the court ordered a break in serving the sentence until his health improved. It didn't improve, so after years of investigations, Henryk Mania spent a total of 6 weeks behind bars of the 8-year sentence imposed. Henryk Mania died on the 13th of April 2020 at the age of 97. 3 days later he was buried at the Central Cemetery in Szczecin. I hope you found this interesting. I've done a great deal of research into the National Socialist death camp at Chełmno nad Nerem, and you can find on YouTube some of the videos that I did in the first decade of this century there. On this channel you can also find videos about the Chełmno nad Nerem death camp today, as well as the fate of the communities in the Reichsgau Wartheland. Most of the background video used in this video is from 2020. I remember the case of Henryk Mania very well and followed it in the newspapers. My first knowledge of it came when I was at the office of a client in Warsaw, and there was a copy of Rzeczpospolita detailing the beginning of the trial, which I read whilst waiting for my client, and then I discussed it with him. As far as Chełmno is concerned, I saw Shaw in the mid-1980s, and I first visited Koło and Chełmno in 1992, when it looked very similar to the way it was when Landsman was there. Today there's a detailed museum at Chełmno nad Nerem, there's a large car park, the site has been secured, and it is a very good place to visit for those who are interested in such things. I hope you found this interesting. You'll find lots of videos relating to the Holocaust on this channel. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I'm based in Poland and Germany. I also often upload on other days as well, and sometimes do live broadcasts. To know when I'm doing a live broadcast, you can subscribe. For the moment, thanks for watching. I'd like to suggest that you watch a video I did on Paul Sarkowski, who had a very similar situation to that of Henryk Mania. Paul Sarkowski was arrested in 1938 whilst trying to cross the German-Czech border in order to go and fight in the Spanish Civil War. This was the beginning of more than 32 years imprisonment in Nazi German camps, the Soviet Gulag, and East German concentration camps and prisons. For the moment, all the best from me.